Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today I want to talk about a musician that I've been wanting to talk about, since I've been doing the blog and, the YouTube channel. It's been one of my favorite musicians since when I first got into, coisas brasileiras, or, Brazilian stuff. Talking about Djavan today. What can I say about Djavan? His career, he's been a very well-loved musician since he came out in 1976, almost 5 decades now. He's been a hit maker. I'm going to talk a little bit about his career, not much because of everything about Djavan. I could very well make an hour or 2-hour video to cover everything, all the highlights in his career. But today I want to talk about a recent interview he did with Folha de São Paulo, the nation's top newspapers, kind of like Brazil's New York Times. And he was talking about this is a question that I talk a lot about on this channel, the idea of representation. Brazil has always tried to hide its Black population. They'll promote Black people to attract tourism or whatever. But inside the country, when it comes to who's considered important, who's considered the people that have the most value, the people are considered the most intelligent, the people are considered the most attractive, who have something closer to the European phenotype. And so Black Brazilians have been talking about this for years, and things have started to change. Like, they've really accelerated in the last 10 to 15 years. And, a lot of important Black Brazilians are taking notice of these changes. So today's story, they've now discovered that Black people are talented and beautiful. Musician Djavan celebrates more on Brazil's small screen. It's something that I've talked often about here, as well as on the blog. So before I even get into this video, want to, if at all possible, do me a favor and like this video, share it also, click on the notification bell and subscribe to this channel. Only way I can get my message out to more people is if, people like the material enough that they'll share it, on your social network. So anyway, let me get into this video. I'm talk a little bit about Djavan, and I'm going to talk about what he said in a recent interview. So today I have the chance to discuss one of my favorite Brazilian musicians of all time, Djavan. As I often do when I speak of Brazilian musicians, I will go back to the first time I heard a song by Djavan. The song was Merece. And I heard it when I first started, exploring Brazilian music. The track was taken from Djavan's 1978. It wasn't his debut album. I think it was his second album, actually, from 1978. I heard the song on another of the many Brazilian music compilation CDs I had been buying, at the time. This one was called Brazil Blue. That's the cover of this particular CD. And besides Djavan, this CD also introduced me to the wonderful music and voice of the great Milton Nascimento. Any of you who are into Brazilian music, you'll know about some of these artists that I mentioned. The disc, in fact, introduced me to numerous other Brazilian music greats, such as Ivan Lins, who, as I mentioned in my video about Jorge Ben and George Benson, I had already heard, at least knew of his music, because one of George Benson's hits in the late 70s, early 80s, the B-side of that, his 45, was Ginorda Ginorda, which was written by Ivan Lins. The CD, Brazil Blue, also featured music by João Gilberto, Wagner Tiso, Milton Banana, Paulinho da Viola, and many others. All on that Brazil Blue CD. It's a good start to get one of these compilation CDs. You can pick and choose the songs that you like. The beauty of compilation CDs is that once you discover a track that you like by a particular artist, you can then go on to explore that artist's catalog. And Djavan would not disappoint. The man's catalog from 1976 to today is filled with memorable tunes, okay? This is his 1980 Alumbramento CD. I started getting into Djavan's with a CD that included 2 of his albums in one CD. The 1978 self-titled album, Djavan, and the 1980 album, Alumbramento. So these are the 2 covers. I think CDs fit, I don't know, be somewhere between 70 and 80 minutes of music. There's a lot of re-releases they were doing where they would feature actually 2 albums on one CD. As if CDs are under 35 to 40 minutes, they can put 2 CDs on one disc, right? all I can say is both of these albums are just phenomenal. I like how it's very much Brazilian music, but you hear elements of jazz, funk, and other world music elements in Djavan's. I was particularly attracted to his first 3 or 4 CDs. So after wearing these 2 albums out, I wanted more. Then I bought his debut album, the 1976 album A Voz, o Violão, a Música de Djavan. Needless to say, I was hooked. So the title of this album, if you translate it, it means the voice, the guitar, the acoustic guitar, and the music of Djavan. This is actually that cover. His first album that came out in 1976 on the Som Livre record label. As I will always see the 1970s as the best era of music, that's where I want to start with. That's where I wanted to start with Djavan. What I love about Djavan is the manner in which many of his songs have a base in Brazil's most popular rhythm, the samba. But just as blues and jazz influences led to modern R&B, artists like Djavan updated the sound of the samba. This is him at looks like an award ceremony for what is it? Brazilian popular music, what they call MPB. This is Preta Gil. Actress and singer. She's the daughter of Gilberto Gil, another very famous, popular musician in Brazil's music scene. I do love samba, but one thing I always missed in more traditional samba is the sound of the bass, that bottom groove at the root of a song. But by the mid to late 70s, artists like Djavan, Banda Black Hill, and Jorge Ben were mixing elements of funk, soul, and jazz while maintaining Brazilian elements of samba in their sound. Okay, this is a more recent picture of Djavan. I think Djavan is about 75 now. This looks like Djavan and his kids. So some of my favorites by Djavan include songs such as Flor de Lis, Para Raio, Cerrado, A Rosa, Água, Merece, Tem Boi na Linha, Triste Baía de Guanabara. Now, fans of Djavan will note that all of these songs are from his first 3 albums. And to be honest, there aren't any songs on these first 3 albums that I just don't like. Let me be clear. Most of Djavan's entire discography has great songs. I'm just somebody who's partial to what music sounded like at the end, the whole 70s era, particularly the mid to late 70s and even in the early 80s. Some of his songs, you can still hear that these songs are very much Brazilian, but listen to Djavan of the late 70s and early 80s, and some of those songs will remind you of what was going on in rhythm and blues in the late 70s and early 80s. A couple of his songs like A Rosa, that's one of my favorites. It has a groove to it. This song was originally recorded by Chico Buarque, one of Brazil's most well-known, recognized, respected songwriters. Djavan took that song and he gave it a little more of a funky edge to it. So this is what I'm digging about Djavan's music. Again, that samba at the root with modern soul, funk production standards in there. So anybody, like I said, anybody you want to look for a Brazilian artist that you might get into, you'll clearly know that Djavan's music is Brazilian, but it'll have enough elements for the American ear for somebody to really dig it. His first LP, again, A Voz, o Violão, a Música de Djavan, with its energetic, syncopated modern samba sound, was unlike anything else coming out of Brazil at the time. Although it was Djavan's debut album, it was much more than that. It marked him as an essential figure in Brazilian music. His first album introduced a superstar in the making to Brazilian music fans. A couple more pictures of Djavan. So the track Flor de Lis became a big hit, along with another song called Fato Consumado. The album features other compositions that made him a fan and critical favorite. In fact, the song Flor de Lis brought the artist international fame when it was covered by American jazz diva Carmen McRae. And when she redid the Djavan song, she renamed it Upside Down. So you look on YouTube and you'll find that song. You find this song, you'll understand that's a Djavan composition. By his fourth LP, Seduzir, Djavan began garnering favorable comparisons to artists such as Stevie Wonder and the Beatles. In fact, for his 1982 album Loose, Djavan collaborated with Stevie Wonder on a song in Los Angeles where the album sessions took place under the production leadership of famous jazz soul producer Ronnie Foster. giving the album a strong mixing of Brazilian musicality with jazzy American influences. Always love looking at the era of the late 70s and the early 80s in Brazil, because you can tell what era you're in by looking at, like the album covers, what people look like back in that day. I remember seeing pictures of Gilberto Gil around that time, and he was wearing the braided, beaded look that had kind of like a Stevie Wonder type look to it. And then you see here Djavan. Now, I don't say he looks anything like Rick James, but the braids put me in, it kind of reminds me of, how Rick James was looking in the late 70s and early 80s. This is from his album Loose. Djavan not only represented Brazilian music of the highest quality, he also represented a Black Brazilian that inspired other Black Brazilians who have always been starving for representation in a country that has always acted as if they didn't exist. This inspiration became clear in the words of one woman who participated in a recent event honoring the musician. So what I'm going to do right now is just overdub this. It was kind of like a meet and greet and an honor for Djavan. I think this was probably about 6 or 7 months ago, and I always wanted to do something with it. This was a perfect opportunity to show this video. This young lady, Djavan is on, he's on the stage. He's in the front of everybody. I guess it looked like a couple other people were up there with him. And this woman in the audience she wanted to share just what his music and his image, everything about him represented to her when she was a girl and even now as a woman. So right now what I want to do is just overdub what this young lady had to say. It's very exciting for me to be here facing Djavan because I'm a girl. I was a girl. I'm a Black woman. I was a Black girl. And there were very few references of such light, of such representation, of such admiration that would make us proud of who we are in a country, in a world that denies us so much, that makes us so invisible. And Djavan is an artist who does that. He makes us, especially us, feel visible and possible. So when I started to get to know Djavan's songs, I understood that living wasn't enough, and I could be more. So thank you for having, in an indirect way, helped me walk my path to believe that it was possible. That's what I'm saying in your ear. Thank you for making me believe that it's possible. Thank you. Thank you so much. So anyway, that was a video that was circulating around several months ago. It just, everybody was touched by what this lady said in the audience. Obviously, the artist was touched. It just speaks to how a lot of Black Brazilians feel about how Brazil has treated the Black population for so many years. Whether it's true or not that Brazil has the largest Black population outside of Africa, or it just has a very large Black population, when you look at Brazil's media, foreigners as well as Brazilians have talked about this, like, where are the Black people? Why is Brazil presenting itself as a European country in the tropics? So, I could go on and on about Djavan, but I'll just say that he's one of the artists mentioned whose music would appeal to the American ear. If you're not familiar with Brazilian music and don't know where to start, I would say that any phase of Djavan's career would be a good choice. Anyway, in a recent interview, which also touched on the topic of Black representation in Brazil, Djavan weighed in on some of the positive changes he's seen in recent years on Brazil's small screen. This is something that I've talked about for a minute. This is an article I did earlier this year. After decades of invisibility and stereotypes, Brazil is discovering the power of Black protagonism in films and on television. So this is a story that I did, like I said, back in February. Just the recognition and the protagonism that a lot of Black Brazilian actors are getting. They're winning awards. They're being the stars and like the majority of cast on Brazil's top novellas, soap operas that come out that everybody watches. For years, they had been relegated to the help on these novellas, stereotypes of the bad people, the stereotypes of the drug dealers, the dangerous people, the bodyguards, the maids, the cooks, the cleaning people. So this has changed in recent years. Now, I'm not one to go and say that this is just everything is completely upside down now. But I'm saying in the years that I've studied and followed Brazil, I've seen more black protagonism and representation on Brazil's big and small screen than any of, I'd say, the first 10 to 15 years that, I was talking about Brazil. So this is something else that, a lot of people see this. This is what Djavan was talking about. This is a film that was going to represent Brazil in the Oscars. It would have been the first time for a black Brazilian director. Now, whether they win these accolades or not, just the very fact that a film with a majority black cast with a black director could be considered to represent Brazil in the International Film Award, in the category of Best International Film at the American Oscars, that's an enormous achievement. Just saying, what's the possibilities in Brazil these days? This is a video from 5 months ago unveiling Brazil's media revolution led by Black people. Again, the rise of Black media representation in Brazil. This was like part 1 or part 2 of that same video. So let me get into what it is that Djavan had to say, because he sees this as well. He says this is the refounding of values. It says Djavan that he celebrates more actors Black actors on Brazil's television. This short article was just, they incorporated parts from the Folha de São Paulo interview. And this was featured on the Mundo Negro website. And it was the author of this article is Isadora Santos. So it says, in an interview for journalist Monica Bergamo's column in Folha de São Paulo newspaper, singer Djavan celebrated seeing more Black actors on television. The artist that recently released or launched his D tour, this is Tournée D tour, Djavan tour, said during the interview that he is optimistic about the advances in relation to the racial agenda in Brazil. Addressing the issue of representation on television, he said, "Today, when I see television covered in Black actors, I feel such joy. This is the refounding of values," he celebrated. Television has discovered Black people. When it started about 5 years ago, I kept hoping it wouldn't be a fad. I can see that it's not. They've now discovered that Black people are capable, talented, and beautiful, he said. Talking about his current musical moment, Djavan recalled the rappers Emicida and Djonga, or just Djonga. "I have a lot to learn from this group of artists that's coming up, whether it's rap or even MPB, which is, Brazilian popular music." He mentioned Emicida and Djonga. These are very popular rappers in Brazil. Both of these guys, I believe, have been nominated at the either the BET Awards or the BET Hip Hop Awards. A lot of Brazilian artists are getting this recognition, in the BET brand. I'm going to talk about that in the upcoming videos as I think the BET Awards is coming up again. And I think there's about 3 or 4 Brazilian artists who have been nominated for these awards in the international category. So Djavan says, "I listen to everything because I need to, first and foremost. And I need to know what's happening, why it's happening, and how they do it. At the same time, I'm very lucky to be able to enjoy the blessing of being sought out by this new generation." That's just to say that, quality artists look towards quality artists. So you'll talk to a lot of Brazilian musicians and rappers, and they'll talk about how Djavan was one of their inspirations. So that's why I wanted to bring this video to you today, because again, Djavan is one of my favorite Brazilian artists. As I said, no matter what album you get from Djavan, a lot of older artists, I notice sometimes they fall off because their music can't keep up with the production standards of modern times. And quite frankly, I always believe artists should stop trying to keep up. Their core fans are going to stick with them, regardless of what they do. In popular music or pop music, you're not always going to be able to keep up with the younger crowd. But if you have fans, those people are going to continue to support you. I don't really support people in their 50s and 60s trying to make music that appeals to 20s and 30-year-old people. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about with Djavan today. It's not just his music, but he also feels this rise in representation of Black actors and actresses in Brazil's media, whether I'm talking television and films. If you went back 20 years ago, again, you would have thought you were in Italy if you would have turned on the TV based on the representation of the Brazilians on television. So anyway, want to know what you all thought about this video. Drop a comment in the comment section, like this video, share this video, consider subscribing to this channel. Click on the notification bell so you'll know when I put up another video. And with that said, I'm going to end this video here and request that you all come back. Check out the next video that I post.